It's Midnight Scroller here for Seiko. And tonight we have Steve Thompson from Happy Life Wood joining us. We are going to interview him and kind of see what he's all about. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So we're going to let people jump on for a second. I'm going to get the comments up really quick. And let's see here. Make sure I can see them all. There we go. And anybody that's in the chat, if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll make sure that they get answered. John Bradley says, hey, Shay and Steve. People are starting to jump on. Hey, John, how are you? All right. We got them all jumping in here now saying hi. Perfect. All right. So let's get started. So how did you get into woodworking?
Well, it's a funny story. About 3 years ago, first of all, I never did any type of handiwork. I never considered myself a handy person at all. I never used any tools, nothing. And I was wanting to do a project. It was some shelves in my garage, and so I bought some tools, and I went on Pinterest, got some plans to do it, and I started doing it, and just realized how much I really enjoyed and loved working with my hands, and how therapeutic it was, and just really got lost. The time would go by so fast, and then just started taking on more projects and buying more tools. It's kind of a natural progression with woodworkers. And that's kind of how I got into the whole woodworking aspect of what I do now.
Hold on, let me put that there. So as far as like your shop goes, what did you start with?
As far as my work,
Yeah.
well, it's funny. That's also a funny story. So I kind of like started doing some simple, furniture builds, and was using pallet wood. Again, it's so common for beginner workers to kind of go through that progression. And I have a design background. I was in marketing for 25 years, and I was a graphic designer. And so I've always had that creative side. And doing the woodworking, the furniture stuff, I was kind of looking for something. I loved doing it, but I wanted to kind of put a creative spin on things, and just kind of bring out that creative side of me. I was just looking for that outlet to do that. So it was my son's birthday. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and I thought to myself, I want to make him something out of wood, but I didn't want to build him like furniture or anything like that. He lives on the other side of the country, so I wouldn't have been able to ship it. It's like, what can I do? So I thought, maybe I'll try and make an image, like a picture out of wood, using the different species of wood to get the color and make the different shapes. And so he's a big sneakerhead. I'm always really been into sneakers, so I decided to do a sneaker. So I I got it. I chose a picture online. I made a template, and you know had my little scroll saw, and I cut out all the different pieces, and I was fitting them together, and I started like sanding, just really basic, fundamental sanding, just more like the root form of like intarsia, where you kind of fit things together, you kind of round the edges, and so I was doing that, and I looked at him like, wow, I think I could really, if I add some more detail and some more, sculpting to this, I think I could make it actually look real. And it ended up coming out really good, and my son loved it, and he said to me, Dad, you've got something here. This is something special. I think you need to think you need to continue doing that. And so for my next thing, so I was still working my full-time job, and I would be, at work, and all I could think about was getting home to work on projects. It was just so fulfilling for me. So I said, I want to challenge myself with my next one. I want to try a portrait. So, got my template, went through that same process, bought some more, some better tools in terms of, sanding and stuff. I bought a rotary tool and different things that would help me in that way. And started cutting my pieces, same thing. And the image, it was actually a portrait of Kobe Bryant. And it took me a long time because I really, was developing my process and how I do it as I went. And so there was lots of starts and stops and do-overs and all that kind of good stuff. But when I finished it, I was pleased with it, but you're always your own worst critic, so I was showing it to different people, and I was getting, really, really good feedback, and once again, my son was like, wow, this is amazing. You should go down this path, continue what you're doing. Well, I had a friend of mine who said, "Would you mind if I put that up on my Instagram account?" And at the time, I didn't really have a big presence on Instagram. I said, "Sure, no problem." So he puts it up, and uh, he calls me back a little while later, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this, but Pau Gasol, who is Kobe Bryant's longtime teammate and friend, shared it on his Instagram." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's really cool." So next thing, so he hangs up, calls me back a little while later, and says he just DM'd me and asked me how he could purchase the piece. So next thing I know, I'm on a Zoom call with Pau Gasol and his business manager, negotiating this artwork. So, long story short, he has the piece, and with that came a huge amount of exposure that I, just would have never gotten without something like that happening. I mean, it's just so, I feel so blessed and fortunate that, something like that happened. And actually, right around the time that that happened, was kind of the beginning of COVID. And I got laid off from my job. And so I had all this, this flood and influx of, you know, um, attention on my work and requests for work. And I said, I talked over my son. He's like, you need to do this full time, Dad. You need to take a shot and do this full time. And I haven't looked back since. It's been a dream of mine. I have to pinch myself every day, uh, knowing that I can just get up, come out into my shop and do what I absolutely love. So it's been a short time frame, but it's just been amazing.
So I know a lot of people stain and paint their wood to get the looks that they're looking for. And I know that you do not do that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your process?
Yeah, like I was saying, I digitally create a template. So I break a photograph down and create geometric shapes out of the different shades and tones that are in that image, so that I can then depict the image in wood. Like I said, I often say that I paint with wood, which is because I don't use any other form of color other than just the natural um, color pigments of the wood. So once I do that, I get the image already. I make myself a template, and then I choose a palette. I'll choose you know different species that I think are going to replicate the tones in the image and the template that I've come up with, and then it's just a matter of scrolling and fitting together. And it's different. It's like intarsia, but it's a little bit different in that I take it, I think, a little bit further than intarsia, the typical intarsia. methods do where, they're not. One of the things that I think I do differently too is that I edge glue everything together. So I take all the pieces and I fit them together, and then I basically edge glue everything together to one unit, or in groups. I'll do it in groups too, so that I can sand and shape as one unit. So that way I can get a more realistic and a more dimensional piece. So I fit those all together just to build this foundation that I can carve from, because that's really it's my favorite part. Of be honest with you, is the carving, and because it really you see the thing come to life, and you're actually pulling that image, off of that canvas that's flat, and then all of a sudden, you're carving dimension into it. So yeah, it's in my process, I use the scroll saw. It's a huge part of the process. Um, and then once the pieces are cut, it's using a drum sander, a bandsaw, all the traditional tools to kind of dimension things. And then once I get things all glued up, then it's a lot of hand carving with power rotary tools, and using like uh, sander that you use on a lathe, or like a, I don't know what you call it, like a grinder. You know what I mean? A grinder that has the drum sander. So I'll shape on there, but a lot of it is literally is just carving. It's like I'm carving, you know, a regular piece of wood, but it's actually all these different colors that are fit together to form the image.
Do you have a particular type of wood that you like to work with the most?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just started using recently, and I just recently finished another portrait of Kobe Bryant, and that I had somebody commissioned me to do, and I used a lot of mahogany in it, and the mahogany was so nice to work with. It was just, the I used the cuts all burrs, and man, they just cut through it really nice and smooth, and it's great to sand. And the other thing I use a lot of too, which is also very difficult to work with, is I use Wenge, and that can be not only hard to scroll, but it's also very difficult to sand and shape. So, but it's whenever I need black, or really dark, um, it's the best thing to use. Walnut is nice to use. Cherry, I use a lot of cherry, Paduke, yellow heart, purple heart. It's so great that there's all these different beautiful, brilliant colors in the natural form of wood. So it's um, yeah, I enjoy all the different species, really.
That's awesome. Do you put any finishes or sealers on them?
Yeah, the only thing I put on at the end is I use a wax oil to just kind of preserve it, and it really gives it a nice finish that's not um, real glossy. I don't want it real glossy or anything. Like if I was to use like a polyurethane or anything like that, I use a wax oil that's really nice. You just put it on, and then you just kind of buff it in and buff it off, and it gives it a nice satin kind of finish.
Well, your work is absolutely stunning. I'm a total
Yeah,
fan.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So we're going to check the chat here really quick. Does anybody have any questions for Steve at all? Let's see. He said very hardwood. Yes, that is. Um, so if you guys are watching, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat as we go. We'll get them answered for you if you didn't know that from the beginning.
Do you ever have
And
anybody ask you questions? Any of the guests ask you a question?
no, not yet.
Because I do. I'd like to ask you one, because you're an expert scroller, and I've been scrolling for a year and a half, and I do okay, and it do what it takes to get my process done, and so that it's successful. But I think there's people that especially people that are doing fret work. It's just so detailed, and but I mean that I don't consider myself a scrolling expert, but I'm okay. But one of the questions I was going to ask you is, and I know that people ask this all the time, but what what type of blades you use?
That is the main question of the hour always. So
Yes.
I use
Go ahead.
both. I use spirals and I use straight blades. I'm probably 90% spiral at this point. Um, I use Flying Dutchman 2 O's and 3 O spiral blades.
Gotcha. Yeah, because it's funny because I think most people that are in this community and are probably watching right now would probably think I'm crazy. But when I did my first Kobe piece and the first sneaker, I did it all with a one spiral, not one spiral blade, but a spiral blade type. And then I use what is it, the TM um, 3 point 0.3 or whatever.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. But I use one blade and one blade only. I don't use anything else. That's what I'm comfortable with,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to. I don't want to mess that up, and I don't want to. I just don't have the time and don't really want to experiment. With different blades. It's just, sometimes it's a little difficult. Getting through some of the harder woods, but for the most part, it's pretty universal, and it's just kind of tried and true for me. But I was just interested in hearing kind of what you used and what some other people use.
Well, that answers my next question for you. I was going to ask you the same thing.
Oh,
Um,
really? Yeah.
there's a big thing with woodworkers and the blade thing, with straights and spirals, and
Yeah.
um, I can do just as straight a lines with a spiral as I can with a
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, I got, you learn your blade. And like you said, you use the one type of blade
That
um,
you're comfortable with.
you're comfortable with. I have two that I go to all the time.
Yeah.
And they have a personality. You learn what they can and can't do. And so once you, once you become friends, then you kind of get
Yeah.
stuck.
Well, it's funny because I always see that question asked on, blogs or whatever. And, it's always the same answer. There's certain, blades that are good for, different types of woods and all that. And it's just like, yeah, I'm just comfortable with what I use, and that's what I'm sticking to.
Well, I'm in the same boat, so you're good. So we have a question in the chat here. Lori Scott asked, she just said she got a bunch of exotics to try for Instaria. She wondered if wood movement is a problem when gluing different pieces next to each other.
Yeah, it's funny. I recently did an interview with Cuts All Tools on YouTube as well, and I got that same question, and it's something that I think about. All the woods that I use are extremely dry. Not that there couldn't be any movement, but I have everything glued so well, and I haven't had a problem. Let's put it that way. Knock on wood. Pardon the pun, but knock on wood. Hopefully I won't have that problem. I've had pieces out there now for a couple of years, and I not one person has said anything shifted or moved. But you know, we'll just hope that it doesn't happen. I think the pieces are so small, and it's not like it's a piece of furniture, that's contracting and shrinking and have like, joints that are, that could move and come apart. It's I think it's a little different, but I guess it's always possible.
Alan Carter's asking, when you use a spiral blade, do you have to slow your scroll saw down?
I think I did. And with the spiral, I actually have thought about using a spiral blade again, just because I cut little tiny pieces. And just to give you a little bit of an idea, how I do my pieces is I work in groups, and what I'll do is I'll have a section that I'm going to work on, and I'll look at the what color, what species makes up the majority of that section, and I'll take that and I'll put my template down on top of that piece of wood, and then I'll cut the spaces out of that piece of wood, and then replace what I cut out with the other pieces, so that it's just easier to. I mean, because if I was trying to cut the pieces and they're all loose and I'm just trying to put them together, it would, with the piece, some of the pieces I have in my are tiny pieces, so it's a lot easier to cut a hole in your piece of wood and then just fit that into that spot, you know what I mean? And then your next one and your next one, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to cut one piece, I'm going to trace that, and then I'm going to fit my next piece. It's just a lot easier to do it, and that's taken me, you know, whatever. I've been doing this a year and a half to kind of develop and hone in and all that good stuff. But back to the spiral blade. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think I do remember slowing it down a little bit, just because it was, it kind of went into the corners a little bit differently. But I haven't used them in so long that it's tough to remember too what exactly I did. But now that I do such small little pieces that I have thought about going to the spiral. But I'll tell you, man, I can get a tiny little circle with that number three, you know.
Right.
So
You do what works.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, Lori says, thanks for answering my question.
Hope I answered it.
Do you have any samples of stuff that you're working on that you can show? I don't know
Uh,
where you're at.
you know what? I am right in the middle of something that's due next week, and I would love to show you guys, but it's 36 by 36 and it's down on a table and it's kind of in pieces, so it would be kind of difficult. And a piece that I just finished and shipped out today, I wish I would have just kept it one more day because I would have shipped it back. But unfortunately,
Totally.
I
We
don't.
have we have your Instagram. Now, if
You
you
know,
guys don't follow him on Instagram, Happy Life Wood on Instagram, go follow him, check out his work. It's amazing.
actually, you know what? I do have something that I could show you if you don't mind me getting up for a second here. And
No, go for it.
be right back.
Okay. And if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. John, I'll ask yours next. I do see that. And hello, JJE.
Sorry about that.
You are all good.
So the piece that I'm currently working on is comprised of 8 different iconic sneakers that have been over the years very, very famous. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing like it's like a almost like a grid look to it, and it's got these kind of 10 by 10 cross sections of like the part of the sneaker that's kind of, what gives it the character and what people recognize. So like here is, well, you can see this, but here's a Van, the Van sneakers. So that's that one. And these haven't really been shaped yet, but it gives you an idea. And that's Wenge, and there's a lot of maple in that, some walnut. This is an Air Max.
It's kind of, let's see if it'll clear up here. It's a little bit, oh, very cool.
Yeah. So as you can see, the different pieces that go in, and like this is the shock part of the sneaker that's kind of translucent. So I use the different shades to get that effect. Um,
So amazing.
this one is Adidas,
Wow.
and then this is a Jordan sneaker, and it's gonna look funny to people, but because I'm still working on it, but like, well, you can see some of the detail,
Yeah.
in it.
So those little tiny pieces like on the side, are those all individual pieces of wood?
Yeah, these are all individual. So what I do, is I put my template over this piece of wood, and I trace the shapes, and I cut all those out, and then I put a piece of tracing paper over that and trace the holes, you know what I mean? And then transfer that to another piece of wood, cut those out, and so it's a process. There's a lot, there's a lot of steps to it.
What's the longest time you've spent on one project?
My first Kobe piece, like I said, took me about at least 2 months, but that, I was working full time at that time, and like I said, I was going kind of developing my process during that time, and like I started and stopped and started over and all that stuff. But this last Kobe piece that I just did, I actually created for Steve Butcher, who's he's like one of the best tattoo artists in the world, out in LA, and that took me about a month and a half.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very time consuming. It really is.
But the end result is amazing. So it's
Thank you.
totally worth it.
Thank
Um,
you.
John Bradley's asking, how thick of wood do you use?
You know, I use mostly like 3/4 to an inch. Um, and but a lot of times if I want like, for instance, if you look at this right here, uh, it's stepped up a little bit, like right here. It's hard to see on here, but that's because I put shims on the back to build it up. So I'll cut, a piece of 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch plywood to get the different levels, so that I don't have to carve. I mean, it's easier to carve that way if I start out with it already being kind of dimensioned that way.
That makes sense.
Because I mean, it's difficult to find a lot of these different woods in, you know, I mean, if I could get, you know 2-inch thick lumber and just dimension it to my what I wanted to, that would be great, but you just can't. Like, I just got some holly, which is like the whitest wood that you can get, and it's 3/4. But there's nothing, I can't really get it. You can, but it's like really, really expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely more limited.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea with the shims. Um, Harnell Media says cool Instagram page.
Thank you.
JJE says hello. And any more questions in the chat? We'll see if we got any more here coming in. So where do you see yourself going in the future?
Um, one of the things that I've really kind of gravitated towards, and just because it's a passion of mine, and my son is really involved in my whole business. He's very integrally involved in my marketing and my Instagram and social media presence. So we work really closely together, and we both have a lot of the same interests. So one of those is sneakers, and I've built some really strong relationships in with some really great brands in that space. So it's probably going to be kind of going down that. I love doing portraits. I've done a handful of portraits this year for different people, um, but I my favorite thing to do are sneakers. So but we're also looking to build Happy Life Wood into a brand that's going to have some different things we'll be launching within the next couple years, from apparel to different things like that. So keep an eye out, because our my website will be announcing some of those things in the future.
That's awesome. I have no doubt you're going to be completely successful, and it's going to be a huge deal.
I appreciate that.
Let's see. Any more questions for before we take off? Oh, I don't want to keep you here past your dinner. Let's
Well,
see.
it's actually 8:30 my time Eastern.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
You already
yeah.
had dinner.
I already had dinner, so we're good.
Let's see. And then I actually have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So as far as you're doing this full time now, do you just get to like walk out to your shop, and do you have certain hours? How do you do like a work life balance with what you do
Yeah.
if you're doing it full time?
Yeah, there is none. There really isn't. I work all the time, but I love it. So like, I'm working on this project, and it's I've got to have it done next week. So I put in 16, 17 hours yesterday, and but it doesn't bother me at all. I just absolutely love what I do. So I have to really try and force myself to you know break away from it from time to time, because I know that can be unhealthy too. So yeah, I try to find a balance in doing some different things. I like I'm a golfer, so I play golf, and big sports fan. So try to go to some games here and there. But it's funny, because ever since I started, like, and I built this shop, like, I feel like anxiety when I'm away from it. It's crazy, but this is my sanctuary. This is where I absolutely love to be.
Well, it's the perfect job then.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I feel so grateful for that.
Yeah, woodworking is definitely like therapy.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love it. Alan says, love it, no schedule. John Bradley says, have fun and scroll on. Thanks for coming, John.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
So thanks for coming on, Steve. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can maybe get you on another time, and we can see some more of your work. But if you haven't yet, definitely go to his Instagram page. And I didn't get your website. You want to tell them where they can find you?
Yep, it's www.happylifewood.com. And I'm also on TikTok, so I do a lot of
Ooh,
TikToks. Yeah,
I'll have to find you on there.
yeah. TikTok is something that my son, really pushed me in, because in the beginning I was kind of resistant and was like, why don't. but it's been amazing. I had a couple videos that went viral, and it's really for anybody that's not on TikTok. I I can't say enough what a great community, and how much you know people support artists, and it's phenomenal. It really is. I think sometimes it gets a little, that's a little bad perception from some people, and as far as what it is. But I'll tell you, it's a great social platform.
So you're on Instagram, TikTok, your website, and do you have a Facebook page at all?
I don't have Facebook. No.
Okay. All right. So go check him out on those. It's amazing. I did want to ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Um, you did a portrait of a little girl.
Yeah.
What's the story on that?
Oh man, I'll tell you, it was. I started. It was about it was last April, I think. It was like a year ago, or right around there, and I got I got a message from this woman, and she basically said, my daughter just passed away last week, in a tragic accident, and you know, would you be able to do a piece, a portrait of her? And at the time, I was like really busy, and I was booked out, and I said, I would love to. I My heart just sank. I heard in this woman's voice not only the hurt that she was feeling, but the how much she wanted to do something like this for her, and I was just so touched and so, moved by it. And I said, I can't do it, right now, but I'm going to do this piece for you. Just, give me a little bit of time. Let me get through some of these commissions. And she was patient, and I yeah, ended up doing the piece. And she flew out here from California to pick it up, and it was the most, emotional experience. I mean, her coming out here and seeing that piece for the first time, and the joy that it brought me, knowing that I could do a little bit to help her family through the such a difficult time is really, why I do what I do. And I've made so many different friendships and relationships through this, that are, just great people out there. And that's probably the best aspect of this whole thing for me, is the friendships, the bonds that I've developed with different people. As a matter of fact, when I went out to LA to deliver that piece to Steve Butcher, I we had dinner with her and her family, which was great. So we got to reconnect, and I mean, we almost feel like, family members now. So it's really neat. And I met with another friend that's been following me since the beginning, and just great people out there.
That's awesome. Wow,
Yeah.
what a story. I knew there was something and I wasn't quite sure, so I wanted to. That's
That
cool.
was a special one. That was a special one. It's I've done a couple that have been tribute pieces, and couple that are, really special to me. I did one of my dad, which was really kind of sentimental, and again, it's knowing that that piece is going to give somebody, joy, and it just is just it's amazing to me.
Well, your work definitely shows your heart. So
Thanks. Yeah, I try and put everything I can into it, because I know that people are going to have these for a long time, and just try and do the best that I can.
well, you do an amazing job. Well, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank
Thanks everybody for coming on in the chat. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here as well. Do you have anything else, Steve?
No, again, thanks so much for having me, and good luck with this. I think it's great what you guys are doing. And I'll be tuning in to see other guests that you have on, and good luck with it.
Well, thank you. And hopefully you'll be back someday.
Yeah, anytime, anytime.
We'd love to have you. All right, you guys, have a good night.
All right, thank
Bye.
you.